McDonald's as a company has experienced many highs and lows since the beginning. If you watch the movie The Founder, then you're already familiar with the true story of Ray Kroc, who was a struggling paper cup and milkshake mixer salesman that kind of just showed up one day at the two brothers Richard and Maurice's original McDonald's in San Bernardino, California. He then weaseled his way into business with them, and Ray eventually franchised and continued expanding behind their backs, which ultimately resulted in a somewhat forceful takeover of the company at the end. McDonald's would continue rising to fruition, being known as that fast, affordable, and easily accessible place to eat, with new locations popping up all around the United States. And that was the major selling point for McDonald's in the early days. It was their bread and butter, and even with early price increases trending with economic inflation at the time, they were still dominating the cheap, quick bite fast food industry. Before the whole Ray Kroc takeover, the success of the flagship location in San Bernardino was largely due to the brothers implementing the Speedy Service System. Well, that and the burgers were delicious, but the Speedy Service System was a revolutionary way for automotive manufacturers to increase productivity on the assembly line, which Richard and Maurice saw as an opportunity to be implemented into their fast food service. And when they did, this enabled them the quick production of these delicious burgers. But as the franchise grew and more menu items were starting to become introduced, like the Big Mac in 1967, it became a lot more difficult to utilize this system as they were no longer making identical burgers for every customer like they were doing in the early days. And the market for fast food overall was evolving. Competitors like Burger King and Taco Bell were also seen opening new locations and expanding their customer base, but for many years McDonald's was still proving to be the real king of fast food. That was up until recently though. With the new price rises, they may have just gone too far, and it's starting to have some noticeable consequences that could potentially be the end of the reign for this fast food empire. The biggest price spikes occurred in the 2000s, but even in 2002, a Big Mac meal was only $3.99. That price sounds pretty cheap, and the median household income at the time was $42,409. But things like milk being $2.80 a gallon, eggs 96 cents per dozen, and bread at 92 cents a loaf, McDonald's still remained as a go-to affordable option for the whole family. By 2013, the Big Mac meal had jumped to a whopping $6.19, but still substantially cheaper than today's price, with a median household income at the time of $52,250. But now we're looking at paying $3.50 a gallon of milk and $1.86 for a dozen eggs. And living busy lives, it was an easy solution to just swing through the drive-thru and get dinner. And as unhealthy as it may be, it was still food, and it was cheap food that tasted good. So McDonald's was still continuing to thrive with the lower income households. I mean, even in 2019, the Big Mac meal was still averaging to be around $7.50, and the menu still even included more affordable options like the $1, $2, $3 menu and $1 drinks. 2019 could arguably be the best year for McDonald's as well because they introduced the all-day breakfast, which unfortunately they quickly took away in 2020. But now we come to last year, 2023, when these price changes really became noticeable, not just with menu prices, but with everything in life overall. This is attributed to many different economic and socioeconomic factors that I'm not going to cover in this video, but the average Big Mac meal was now sitting around $13. And we're no longer seeing things like $1 drinks or any sort of dollar or value menu. And keep in mind these prices do vary by location, so even at some McDonald's locations we saw Big Mac meals being as high as $18. By the end of 2023, the household median income was now a staggering $75,143, but things like rent and the cost of homes skyrocketed, along with all the other living necessities. Focusing specifically on renters, the average rate of increase per year is 3.2%. But according to Rent.com, from 2020 to 2023, we saw a record high of 26.3% in just those 3 years. And the household income median being at $75,000 includes people like dinks or dual income no kid households making a combined income. For a person living alone or on a single salary, their household income may be far from that current median. But how is this even any different than before, and how is this going to affect McDonald's in any way? Well, the burger chain recently reported weaker than expected sales at its US stores, causing CEO Chris Kempczynski to finally address this McDonald's affordability problem. He did indicate that the chain would cut some prices on menu items, but nothing is actually confirmed. I mean, he even said eating at home has become more affordable, which it always hasn't been in the past. And he's right, as grocery prices still rose in 2023 on top of all the previous rises in the previous years, dining out at McDonald's has continued to rise by even more. And now we're seeing these prices not rise as much as they were, but we're seeing them still remain high with no end in sight. And many Americans feel that the economy in its current state is weak. And because of that, it's putting a ton of pressure on lower income families, which was the vital customer base for the fast food chain. Kempczynski said that customers making $45,000 or less decreased the most in this most recent quarter. And he followed that up by mentioning that there is a chance we could see a decrease in the cost, but there's no details on the timing or the size of any price cuts, so I wouldn't count on it anytime soon. He claims the focus on affordability has shifted from just a few months ago, but he also boasted that the US menu prices, even in 2023, overall weren't deterring any sales. Back in October on an analyst call in 2023, he said, even though we're pushing through pricing, the customers are tolerating it well. While inflation has slowed significantly, prices for everyday necessities still remain high and people are just getting fed up. And McDonald's is now caught in the crosshairs because their history of being affordable to lower income households is starting to just disappear. And because most McDonald's restaurants in the United States are independently owned, that means prices can vary depending on the location and where the franchise is. But still, even up till recently, McDonald's said that most customers are willing to pay. And even now, wealthier customers seem undeterred, Kempczynski said. But how often are wealthy people looking for an alternative cheap meal option? To me, that statement just seems very out of touch. And then following that, he doubled down saying for middle and high income groups, we're not seeing any real change in behavior, and we are continuing to gain share with those groups. He did come back around a little bit and say that the battleground is certainly with those lower income consumers, but why even focus on the wealthier customer base if the real battle is with those who are most affected by the current remaining high prices? Why not go back to the bread and butter of fast, affordable, and easily accessible food that built this fast food empire? This has caused the public's response to rip through the internet like a wildfire. These once loyal customers are now publicly calling out McDonald's, who are becoming a frequent target on these social media platforms for complaining about high food prices. Viral stories have been expressing frustration at the cost of a Big Mac meal, along with some other menu items. This whole thing has become a TikTok category on its own. And a plethora of these TikToks are saying that the company has gone too far compared to previous price hikes, and some even complaining that locations are charging more than $3 for a single hash brown. A specific TikTok titled "McDonald's has gotten too cocky," the user claims, "Who told y'all it was good enough to be charging this much for your food?" And I agree with them. The food's not great, and the prices are way too high for anyone to really justify swinging through the drive-thru like they used to. Some other videos have also gained popularity on other platforms, emphasizing that a sleeve of medium French fries costs roughly as much as the fish fillet sandwich. So how is all this really affecting McDonald's? As we already know, customers making $45,000 or less decreased the most in this recent quarter. But they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and in the end, does it really matter or does it really affect them? Yes and no. Global sales in Q4 of 2023 still saw a 4.3% growth during that 3-month period, but with social media being used more than ever as an outlet for people to find other people with relatable problems, it can cause for some action to be taken by the company or potentially result in a decrease for Q1 2024. They're already well aware of this decline in a demographic that is their bread and butter, but that ability for customers to spread information across different platforms can act as a domino effect. And once more and more people start choosing to go elsewhere for affordable meals and talking amongst their peers, it's hard to get them to want to come back, especially when it's seen as unhealthy and customers develop better eating habits or just find better tasting cheap food elsewhere. They don't have McDonald's in their mind anymore as that go-to option like the past years. But in the end, who knows if they'll even commit to lowering these prices. From what the CEO was stating about their wealthier customers being undeterred, we could start seeing McDonald's pushing more as a higher brow fast food chain targeting that specific demographic, which would leave their customer base that built this empire in the dust. Thank you a ton to all the new viewers and those who are taking the time to watch this video. A lot of time is spent researching, writing, and editing these videos, which I do all myself. So if this video made you say, well, that's something, then we achieved our goal here today. Please consider supporting the channel. The best way to do that is by liking and subscribing. I'm always working on improving with each video, so again, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. As always, stay safe and stay curious, everyone.